Hello, hello. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, welcome everyone. I'm just going to hide our non-video participants so you can focus in on your speakers today, and also encourage everyone to acquaint themselves to the chat space because we will definitely be using that to have discussion for today. I'll introduce myself and my co-host and also check in on just some housekeeping rules so that our webinar can run smoothly today. My name is Jasmine Johnson. I am performer known as Jet Setting Jasmine. I am the co-owner of Royal Fetish Films, Jet Setting Jasmine Sex Entertainment and Education Company, as well as the owner and lead therapist at Blue Pearl Therapy. So yes, lots of hats, and we're going to talk about how all of those hats came together for today's presentation. I'd like to thank our esteemed partners at Pineapple Support, who I've had the wonderful experience of working with over the years as a therapist and a support person to Pineapple Support that provides amazing mental health support to performers across the globe, and to our sponsoring partner, Playboy, who I am so grateful to be one of their first not safe for work content creators for their new platform, Playboy Centerfold. So it's like all my worlds have come together today. And with me, I welcome yet another very important person from not only the sex industry, but also our company, Royal Fetish Films. Tiana Glitosaurus Rex, who you see sitting beside me, is the president of the Sex Work Survival Guide and has publicly spoken about trauma-informed consent, cannabis alternative lifestyles, and sex positivity. She has a passion for building community through curating experiences that celebrate inclusivity and education. She joins me today in the capacity of the Royal Fetish Films production assistant and on-set guardian. So thank you so much, Tiana, for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jasmine, as well as Pineapple Support and Playboy.
Wonderful. So you'll see in the chat, I've included our bios if you want to dig into them any further. Also our @, and Tiana, I'll ask you to please put in the information for the Sex Work Survivor Guide along with your social media. We have 45 minutes to share with everyone what it's like to create, develop, and sustain boundaries on set, which I know we will do just perfectly. But there's no way that we can cover it all. So I want to let everyone know that we will remain accessible to you via social media, whether it's for company consultation, personal consultation, and or just pointing you to the right resource. Pineapple Support, of course, is wonderful for those of us who maybe have had some challenges on set or are concerned about challenges on set and need a space to process that. We have weekly support groups, including one that I facilitate on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. for BIPOC performers, and also one-to-one therapy. And Leah can share more about that with you. If you have a question, you can place it in the chat. And the founder and representative today for Pineapple Support is on today's call. So, all right. So boundaries on set. Let's just start by defining what those things are. Boundaries. The definition that I brought up specifically for this call was boundaries in the workplace, because that's what we're talking about, right? And we have all kinds of boundaries. We set them, we respect them. Some of them we even cross, and those can be in our personal relationships, our relationships with ourselves, and those boundaries go on to how we set up our structure in our workplace. So I'm going to read this definition to you so we're all starting from the same space. Workplace boundaries are the physical, emotional, and mental limits you create to protect yourself from overcommitting, being used, or behaving in an unethical way, or having behavior towards you in an unethical way. Boundaries separate what you think and feel from the thoughts and feelings of others. So these are your personal walls, barriers. Some of them may be permeable and flexible, and some of them may be hard, core, brick and mortar, concrete, no passing. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we create those for, one, the people that we work with, and also for ourselves in specifically the adult industry. we're going to be talking about on-set boundaries, right? So when you think of on-set, sometimes people create this visual of being on set means I'm going into a production studio, there's lights, there's cameras, there are multiple people there. It's a large company. Maybe I'm shooting for Playboy, maybe I'm shooting for Royal Fetish Films, maybe I am shooting for some other well-known company. But I want to open that visual up to your cam space, right? That's a set. You're creating content, you're creating a production, you are delivering a product of your entertainment via a camera, right? Whether it's being recorded or streamed, you are going to consider that as far as from this day forward as being on set. So sometimes on set will involve lots of folks, and other times it just may be you and your audience, but that's still your set. Okay, so this call is for everyone. If you've ever shot for a larger company or studio or someone other than yourself, you may be listening to this conversation thinking, I don't know that my boundaries were respected, or I don't know that I delivered any boundaries. If you haven't shot for a company, you may be thinking, how would I build the courage to have these kind of conversations? So today may be a starter space, a starter spot for you, and for others, it may be a reflective spot for you. Either one is fine. All I know is that from this point moving forward, you're going to be able to be better prepared to set boundaries in whatever set space you're in. If you're a producer or a director, videographer, someone that's looking to get into the role of creating sets to produce adult content, this is not the only class that you're going to need to take to consider yourself a professional at setting safe on-set boundaries. Again, starter or reflective, but this is not the end all be all. So we definitely want to see you digging into the Sex Work Survivor Guide. We definitely want to see you reaching out to community. We definitely want to hear how you are expanding on the thoughts that we shared today, as well as coming up with your own protocol that's really going to work for your set. All right. Anything I missed in the intro, Tiana, or should we just go ahead and dig in?
That sounds like the perfect setup.
All right, cool. So we know what boundaries are. We know what sets are. Let's talk about who is on set. So again, as I mentioned, maybe it's just you and your audience, your cam model audience. And that's one way. The other thought is perhaps there's a director, videographer, photographer, sound, grip, performers, the assistant, production assistant, makeup, hair, wardrobe. There's a lot of people sometimes to create a porn, and everyone has their role. And everyone on that set should come with their boundaries prepared, understood, and communicated to everyone else. So we understand what everyone is there for, what their role is, and we also understand how that person expects to be treated in that workplace. Who should not be on set? And this is a big boundary, for our company as well. Friends, onlookers, the public, unless it's a public show, which boundaries, right? Did they sign up for this? Did they give consent to be a part of your production? Unauthorized cameras. I've been on sets before where I'm like trying to shimmy into a corset and someone is like going live on their social media. And that is crossing a boundary for me because I signed up to be filmed by this particular company, not by someone's personal social media. So we have to sort of broaden our thought about and our questions about who should I expect to be on set and who should I expect not to be on set. We have had performers ask if they can bring a companion on set because that person makes them feel comfortable, or this is going to be their ride and they may not have somewhere else to sit and wait during that time. Those things can be negotiated. If I know that someone else is going to be on set, perhaps I will provide a waiting room, a green room for them. I'll get consent from the other performers and the cast and the crew so that they understand what this person's purpose is. Or I may have to say, we'll have to either think of another way, another place for that person to be, or perhaps this is just not the production for you because it is a closed set. And we've really had to make those type of decisions with having a smaller set during the time of COVID, as you can imagine. All right, Tiana, I'm getting them set up for you. Okay. And please, as we're having discussion or as we're presenting, please put things in the chat. We will certainly love to get to them. And what we don't get to on today's call, we will share via social media for follow-up, okay? So how do you help everyone on set develop and share boundaries? Now, this is one of my pet peeves / red flags, is when we ask a performer, hey, let's talk, or a performer or cast or crew, let's talk about some of your workplace boundaries so that way we can have a dynamic work experience. And they go, I'm cool with everything, like it's no problem. I'm like, red flags. No, we can't quite be cool with everything. And oftentimes we hear, well, I'm not actually cool with everything. I've just never been asked that question to have a response. When anyone gives that response or anything like it, I usually like stop and pause. This looks like someone that I may have to take some time and help them develop boundaries and be able to communicate those things. 9 times out of 10, when they start with, I'm cool with anything, and we dig a little bit deeper, we get their no's, and their no's are valid. They could definitely have been crossed if we didn't dig a little deeper. And you'll hear what some of those questions are momentarily from Tiana. We like to have a pre-production meeting, regardless of the size of the set. So again, for those of us who are just a solo independent artist, and our set is our corner of our bedroom or our cam room or our cam office, having a pre-production meeting, even with yourself, is important. What am I going to do today? How long am I going to be on? Who am I going to be performing for? Who am I trying to target? What kind of requests am I willing to take today? What kind of requests are going to be an easy no? When we have those things set up prior to engaging with our audience, it makes it really easy to uphold our boundaries. So when someone comes on any of my live shows and they go, well, can you stick it in your butt? Like, I've already decided that hours ago. No, I can't. That is a boundary for me. Now, if they say, hey, can you use that, that pink toy that you've used before? Yes, I can, because I actually have that out and ready, and that I have already decided that those are the things that I want to engage in today. So having those boundaries set, even when it's just you, allows you to stick to it. Same thing with having a time set. My production is going to go from 8 a.m. and I'm going to be done by noon for lunch. When I make that decision, then I'm able to stick to it, which is very different than 12:30 rolling around and going, I'm hungry, but maybe I should go a little bit longer. Oh, I can push it a little bit longer. So setting those boundaries helps you plan for your show, and it helps you deliver because you know what you're doing, how long you're doing it, and you also know what you're not doing. When we're talking about a larger production, we are being really clear on who's shooting, what, when are we shooting, where are we shooting, and how much are we shooting for? Having those helps you prepare, right? If I'm going in to do a domination scene and I know I'm going to be doing a lot of flogging and a lot of physicality, I have that information ahead of time. So I know to eat a really good breakfast. I know that I may want to rest, not go and work out the day before or what have you. I am able to prepare myself to deliver my best performance ever because my boundaries have been made clear, as well as the expectations and boundaries of the people that I'm working with. Other things that we discuss in our pre-production meeting, testing expectations. Nothing like being on a set and then start talking about like, oh, did you get your test and what body fluids can we swap? That takes up a lot of time, and it also puts us in a vulnerable situation to have to say yes or no, or think about something in the middle of production when you're on someone else's, including your own, dime. So having a pre-production meeting really allows us to iron out some of the logistics and also allows us to make sure that we have the protections, like the definition says, in our workplace environment. I like to ask and share, if I'm performing versus if I'm producing and directing, where the material is going to be, where the material is going to go. My performance may vary if I know that material is going to go somewhere that I'm very excited about or not so excited about. How will I be described in this production? This allows me to determine if I even want to be a part of it. Are you going to honor my requests, my sexual orientation, my gender identification, the way I like my body to be described, my cultural representation, or are these things that I'm going to have to fight later? Right? So let's head off some of those things by being able to discuss them. And if you're a performer and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so much to ask, it's better that you ask than have to sue later. And this is a new way of doing business that we find to be more in line with performer ethics, that we find to be more in line with being performer centered. And producers and directors may not be used to having these conversations, but you can be the one that brings it to their space. So you're looking out for yourself, but you are also setting up a precedent for other performers to have these same kind of conversations. So don't even think about it. Asking these questions is going to make it better for you, and it is going to also make it better for our industry at large. All right. We ask questions like, what do you enjoy? What do you enjoy performing? Not just what do you enjoy sexually, because there are some things that I love to do off camera, but you're not going to get me to do them on camera, right? So there's a very big difference in what are you into versus what do you enjoy performing, as well as what don't you enjoy performing. People will share. I enjoy doing this in my personal life, but this is something that I don't do professionally, or even vice versa. And that's okay. And this is really important. So we're not making any assumptions of anyone. Do you have a no shoot list? Some folks have a list of people that they will absolutely not work with. And we don't need to know why. We just don't. People's preference is their preference. Sometimes it is something that has happened directly to them. Other times it is hearsay and they don't want to find out on their own time. And that shoot list can be really important. We don't want someone to share with us that their don't want someone to share their no shoot list when they meet the performer the day of. Or things happen where we have to swap out performers because things happen. And we want to know if we are sourcing someone else that it does not conflict with you feeling safe and comfortable. So having that list and being comfortable with sharing it is important, as well as being on the other side, asking for that list is important. The questions go on. I'm going to let Tiana share more about our pre-production call, because I'm usually directing and performing, and I like to be on the side of the performer and have my yeses and nos shared right along with my co-stars. And so we ask someone who is not going to be directly in the production to host this call. So it never feels like, I don't want to do that with you. It feels like we're just asking someone who is not getting any of the juice on the day of production to be a part. It's really important also for Royal Fetish Films that the people that are going to be on set with you are people that you've had an opportunity to meet and engage with. So having your production assistant participate in a pre-production call is already setting that relationship and that rapport. So when we are on set, and if there is a concern or question or I thought I told them that I didn't like that, there is someone who you're already familiar with and that is familiar with your boundaries that you've met at least virtually once. So I'll turn it over to you, Tiana.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Always so helpful and informative as always. And I also just want to mention, you posted that your cervix is dilated and you're here giving workshops and you're due like any moment. So I just have to acknowledge that. And I just, if the room can also acknowledge that that is what this beautiful human is like giving us and the world right now. Just wanted to start my talk by acknowledging you. Um, so thank you for sharing what you did. And before I get into how we do our pre-production notes, I just wanted to first go over certain points that I feel like add on to what Jasmine has already generously contributed. And that is, right as she stated, that the role that I offer also helps the power dynamics that are established within the director or even talent, because we work with people that are new to the industry. They usually have had some experience on set, regardless of what level of professional set that is. They're new to meeting Jasmine and King, and they are their own celebrity and persona. And as someone who gets to work with them all the time and still fans girls out occasionally, I also acknowledge that there is still, you want to be your best self. You want to do all the things that you can so you don't disappoint these people that you've worked so hard to get to at this point. And so having me there, or having someone like me in this position, helps alleviate that power balance and dynamic that Jasmine had touched on just the last moment. So from there, my role also goes to, if boundaries are crossed on set, like if an infraction has happened, like we've had this amazing conversation. I'll go into a bit detail of what our pre-production agenda actually looks like. But then we also need to acknowledge, what happens, and how we handle that. So that way people don't feel called out or cast upon, the person that, or the people even, that the boundaries have offended, how they can, it's not their responsibility to do that. So that's also a role that I can help facilitate. So that way, it's not on any one person to now, correct this potential infraction, if you will. I think it's also part of the process is like getting videos and pics of tools and toys and equipment that will be used. That's also an amazing, if you can't actually do a tour of the facility or the set that you're going to be on, you can do the best by being as transparent as you can with where people will be situated, so that they know where their physical bodies will be, and they can mentally and emotionally prepare for what they're going to be offering, as well as like it helps bring up boundaries like, oh, there's a stockade in the room. Okay, well, I didn't realize that I need to now check in with myself of how I feel about being put in a stockade. That's, not something that may come up when people are even prepared with knowing, okay, these are my boundaries. Yes, I may not like things, penetrated in certain orifices, but I never even thought about, being strapped into, a toilet seat, like if you, those are the kind of things that can help also be brought to the pre-production meeting. So that way everybody has transparency and as much informed consent as possible. And it helps facilitate and mitigate concerns in the future. So that way they're not surprised. And then everybody is put in an awkward situation on either side, because everyone is there to do their best, to create the best content that they have, or else what's the point? Why are we in this industry if we don't want our absolute best? So in order for us to come up with our absolute best, we need to prepare all of ourselves for what can come, so that way we can bring that to the table. I also think it's very important to have timetables and deadlines. Yes, like Jasmine mentioned, in bigger productions like Playboy or mainstream media, they have, sort of timetables of when your call time is, when you break for lunch, when you should potentially wrap, and so on and so forth, with different scenes that are going to be interacted. Even if you're solo camming, like she said, also create timetables and deadlines for yourself. It is important to schedule breaks. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Even if you're doing a 30-minute cam show, that 30 minutes, you probably have to still do, 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after. So keep in mind all of those aspects. And if you're, the bigger the production, the even more marathon it is than it is of a sprint, because you have so many other moving parts and situations to consider. So if you're the crew, always be advocating for yourself when you need schedules and breaks and self-care, as much as the talent needs to advocate for themselves as well. And a lot of what we talk about is professional advocacy. It's ways for you to validate yourself so that you can show up like your best self, like mentioning before, but also keep a professional standard. So that way you're not being bratty, you're not being whiny, you're not that bitch. You may be that bitch, but you're not a bitch. So that just allows the balance to still be there and everybody to still feel good about what they're bringing to the table. You're that bitch. Yes, you are, kitty cat. The last thing I touch on just before going into the agenda is behind the scenes. Even if it's not your content that you may own, either as the crew or as the talent, if you're being paid to be on set, ask in that pre-production meeting how they feel about you taking behind the scenes. So that way you can still have some sort of ownership of your own content. Content is key. We are living in an age where we have to feed that content monster. So every part of that animal that you can take for yourself, for your own autonomy, even if you're behind the scenes. I love taking BTS of me, strapping Jasmine into the, ask somebody and everyone around me be strapping Jasmine into something, or, fixing her hair, or me just showing Jasmine directing, in her full pregnant self, giving these beautiful scenes, her vision of the world. So all of that for me is content that I get to keep based on the conversation that I had in the pre-production meeting and getting everybody's consent that that's something that I can take for myself. So that's something that I definitely wanted to touch on before we jump in. Before I go into the agenda, Jasmine, did you want to say anything on those?
No. And yes, kitty cat, you are that bitch.
You are that bitch. Yes. So first thing we love to establish is all of the talent and crew's pronouns. We want to respect how everyone is coming to the table and how they identify for themselves. So that way we can respect them and their identities moving forward. And then we like to get dates, call times, and locations worked out. So that way everybody knows what dates are you actually filming. Is that one shoot dates based on that production meeting, or is it multiple dates? Will the call time be the same for each of those dates, or will we have various call times? Like Jasmine said, you also have to have a bit of fluidity when you're planning. Even the best laid plans need to have a bit of bounce to them. So, think of yourself as like a palm tree. You want to be grounded and rooted, but you got to be ready for some torrential storms in case all shit hits the fan and now you're in the middle of a hurricane and now your plan is what it was, a great theory, but now the reality has shifted. So that if that helps is a good metaphor of like why the pre-production meeting is important, because it does keep you grounded. It does like amazing foundational rooted work, but at the same time, you have to go into what is possible based on reality and circumstances that can come up. Questions about fluids. Am I not seeing all of the chat questions?
I think you're good. The one that I was sending you was to don't forget to get into some of those yummy questions that get into our orifices and our fluids.
Oh yes, no, yeah. I'm just gonna go breeze straight down how we Awesome. Thank you for that. So then next we want to go into medical conditions that we should be aware of. Jasmine talked about STI, STD concerns. We also want to communicate any rashes on our bodies that we may be aware of, birthmarks even that people want to be aware of, vitiligo some people have on certain parts of their body, which is discoloration of skin, as well as body image concerns, birth control needs or concerns, especially if there is going to be fluid exchange and passage through vaginal canals, as well as projected menstrual cycles. Will you be potentially on your cycle, for the talent that are that bodies that bleed, because that's something that we need to plan for and sort of account for on set, for either you to prepare your body before we actually start shooting, or rethinking some of the scenes we're going to incorporate at all. Next, we like to talk about penetration. So penetration of your mouth, your vaginal, and your anal canal. So how you feel about receiving and giving penetration, and then going into oral. So kissing, receiving, and giving, whether that's oral lips or oral sex. Then we go into content desires and needs. Because we are a smaller production company, we can, sometimes incorporate some things that people need, that they need to shoot. Like my fans need more girl action, or my fans need a bit more puppy play. So I know you guys always use leashes. So maybe if I can do, a bit more puppy play, while you're trying to leash and collar me, that would be great for content that I know that my fans are looking for and need. And so from there, we also want to talk about bodily fluids. So how do we feel? Well, as Royal Fetish, we're always a no-go on scat play. So that's usually not a boundary that even we talk about. So that's something that I, as I'm going through the agenda, bring off right out the bat, that bodily fluids as far as scat, we don't, have on set. But how do you feel about ejaculant, spit, squirt, urine, breast milk? Because we've had amazing scenes with Jasmine's breast milk. And so how do people feel about receiving these fluids, as well as potentially giving these fluids based on the boundaries of the other people that are on set? And then from there, we love to then go into, because we also come from a BDSM background, pre-care, during care, and after care. And pre-care just asks each person, talent and crew, what do you need before you actually show up to set? Do you need to drink some tea? Do you have to call to make sure your babysitter is, okay, because you're about to not be by your phone for, a minute? Whatever have you, we need to know, so that way you are in a great physical and mental mindset to be able to do the things that we've described for the scene that's coming up. And then the during care, what do you need in between shots? So we took a break, we have to reset the camera. What do you need during that moment? Do you need to make sure you get some water? Do you need to, be checked in for a snack? Are you comfortable staying naked, or do you prefer to have some robes or some sort of covering, for you? And then we go into aftercare. Everything has wrapped. We've all congratulated ourselves. We've done the post interview to make sure everyone felt good about what they just shot. Now, what do you need to now reset yourself to go back into the world and continue on to either the next scene that we have to shoot, or to just go about your daily life in general?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I hope everyone is getting this good information. I wanted to also include, Tiana usually also schedules a crew call that may not be as involved as the cast call, because we're not exchanging with that, with the crew in the same way as intimate, but finding out, you're holding a camera for a couple of hours. How, what is that like for you? These are the things that our performers do not want to do, or don't want to perform on camera. So, when giving suggestions, sometimes lighting might say, hey, if I could probably get a better angle if you put them in your mouth this way, and we have to go, no, that's we're not doing that on today's. And so if your crew is also aware of the boundaries that were shared, then everyone is participating in taking care of each other and being responsible. Other things in terms of the crew call is, it really does put the responsibility on everyone in that space to make sure we're all safe. We give everyone permission at the beginning of every scene to call the safe word. We use the universal safe words. Red means everything is absolute stop. There is either an urgency that we need to tend to, or a boundary has been crossed, or maybe there was a boundary we didn't know about that we need to stop and discuss in that moment. Yellow means things are getting a little dicey, we need to slow down, or we need to reposition ourselves. And green means everyone is good, we're good to go. Everyone on our set is allowed and encouraged to call red, yellow, or green. In a lot of sets, it is considered disrespectful and this goes for mainstream as well as adult industry, for someone other than the director to call cut. However, this is how accidents happen. This is how boundaries get crossed when the sole responsibility to keep everyone safe is on one person with only one set of eyes. Okay, so as someone who directs a lot of films, I can be really seeing my vision and feeling amazing about what's happening, but I have no idea that someone behind me is being mistreated or being harmed or having a breakdown of in any capacity, or maybe I don't see someone's toe is in an uncomfortable position because I'm looking at their facial expressions. And we really give that authority to our team to be able to support each other in that production. Because however beautiful that scene is, it can be a traumatic scene if something terrible was happening while it was being shot. Okay. When to go into a little bit more about the during, we review those same boundaries that we talked about in pre-production, because what you feel good and yummy about on Monday is not what you may feel good and yummy about on Friday. Things change. Like you mentioned, like menstrual cycle, right? When I might say like, oh yeah, I'm good. My cycle is doing what it does. I should be perfectly clear on that day. And that day comes and I have cramps and it came early and it's a little messy. We have to reestablish those boundaries for how we arrive on set. The cool thing is we're helping people develop that communication skill, the comfort level with talking about these things. So that way, when we're actually in front of each other and ready to shoot, we already have practice talking about these very personal, and sometimes it can be even uncomfortable to talk about our boundaries changing, but we are not having the discussion for the first time. One of our good friends in the industry, Lucy Hart, has shared with us to budget in loss. And I thought that this was so important for both performers. This baby is doing things to me. Like my voice is changing. I can't breathe anymore. All right, here we go. Our good friend Lucy Hart, a producer in the industry and performer in the industry, shared with us to budget in loss. So this is important for both performers and those of us who produce and direct films. If we know that things may change and we are welcoming these changes and we're being flexible, as Tiana mentioned, we should also look at that in terms of our bottom line. When I'm hired to shoot for a company, when they tell me, I don't know, let's just arbitrary number, let's just say they go, we want you to shoot 2 scenes, $2,000. I go in my head, let me budget just in case I can't shoot 2 for some reason that day. This may be $1,000 shoot. Okay, can you deal with that, self? I can deal with that. So I'm prepared that maybe I can't perform or my co-star doesn't feel the same that they felt when we accepted the job. As a producer, I go into it very much the same way. We set out and we're going to do, like we did recently, we're going to shoot 9 scenes in 4 days. Okay, maybe we'll shoot 6 and budget in for that, so it doesn't feel like such a loss, because we're actually creating boundaries that reflect our industry. And so, sort of thinking about the structure of how we create we create our structure based on not how we wish our industry would work or how we hope it would, but how it actually does. Human beings doing incredible things with our bodies, and sometimes those incredible things take time, or they need to be done at a different time. Okay, and let's see. When people set boundaries, we don't allow them to be crossed. And so this may sound like this is something that we don't allow on our sets. And this is like so historical to porn scenes, fluffing, right? And so fluffing is when one performer asks another performer or someone else on that set to help stimulate them for a sex act. This may look like giving someone oral sex that's not on camera so that they can get an erection, or massaging them so that they can engage in. We ask our performers to be professionals and come prepared for the work that we have already discussed. So if you know that you cannot get an erection without the support of someone else, then maybe your boundary is no, I can perform, but I am unable to do that unless I have a stroker, I have access to porn where I can watch and stimulate myself, or I cannot perform erect if I don't have access to this. So that really helps us also protect the integrity of the set, that people are being paid to perform on camera, not to help other professionals be professionals and perform. And we don't allow the crossing of these boundaries, even if people are like, oh, it's okay, I'll do it. Sometimes that can be a nervous response. It can be a response to someone feeling perhaps embarrassed for someone else, or just want to be a team player. Or perhaps you really don't mind, right? And so we take it very serious. Like, you know, in pre-production, we discussed this as a boundary. You mentioned that this was okay with you. Why don't we hold off on doing that? And maybe next time when we shoot and we discuss it in pre-production, you can offer some different boundaries at that time. So we really try to hold people to what they share as their no's, because it can be a liability, and not only for the company, a liability for that person who extends themselves a little further than they perhaps should. And we can't take things back, but we can always offer new opportunities. Let's see. All right, so also we have a post-interview, as Tiana mentioned, and then we follow up with a post-shoot survey. And we're gonna get to some of those questions in just a moment. Our post-shoot survey, we find it's really important because sometimes things in the moment, your adrenaline's going, you just had some amazing orgasms, there's lights, there's camera, there's makeup, there's all these things happening. And then you go home and you're like, did that happen? Did so-and-so say that to me? Did they describe my body that way? I think I asked them not to put their fingers there, and I'm pretty sure that happened. Those things happen. Sometimes it's an accident, and sometimes people violate other people. And sometimes accidentally, and sometimes unfortunately, intentionally. And as many sets of eyes that we can have, we're not all processing things the same way at the same time. And so we allow our cast and crew to be able to give feedback after shooting, after they've had some time to sit with that shoot. Our company is also linked and networked to people who have supportive resources like Pineapple Support. We have access to mediators in our industry that can help us navigate those things that may happen after we've wrapped, after everyone's been paid, and everyone has gone along their merry way. If something later comes up that suggests a boundary was crossed, or something does not sit well with a performer, cast, or crew, that we are there to continue to support. So we do definitely look at aftercare for the scene, but also aftercare for the production. And we let our performers know this so that they don't have to feel like, oh, I didn't say something in the moment. Because we know how that victim shaming happens, right? So it's okay that if you're unable to process or share or say out loud in the moment, we will still hold space for you after, validate your concerns, and follow through in the best possible way that we can. And this is a part of acknowledging that as much as we try to have a completely safe space to have intimacy on camera, that there is no such thing as a completely safe space, but we can reduce harm, and we can certainly create opportunities for people to be able to share and have the kind of justice or the type of closure to something that may happen that may cause them to feel uncomfortable. So just want to share with you our many different practices at Royal Fetish Films. We have taken the same model and raised it to other companies that we work with, as well as mainstream sets. I participate in a collective called Reps on Set, where I'm an intimacy coordinator, and often get hired specifically because of my work in the adult industry. And I can tell you that the mainstream movie and entertainment industry have so much to learn from what we do in porn. Even our minimum in porn beats a lot of the maximum in the mainstream industry. And so I want you to know that the work that you're doing just by being here, absorbing this information, has a trickle down effect, or a trickle up, whatever way, in a direction. It expands beyond the porn industry and makes things safer for people to entertain in the most intimate ways, but still be regarded as whole humans with integrity. So I am going to take a look at the chat box. I love shares. What's the best way to address the weaponizing of boundaries or suspicion, i.e. someone who puts limits on conversations and or interactions in matters that involve you stating that this is their boundary? Tiana, do you have a response to that so I can take a breath?
Yes, I do. It's definitely, if you need to take a breath, please take care of yourself and the human inside you. That is a really hard position to be placed in, because you don't want to, not advocate for yourself, but also you are not being heard and validated. So number one, I would question, do you need to work with this person? Because if they're already not respecting your boundaries, that's a flag, a yellow, orangish, not maybe near red, because you can maybe get past that, and you can maybe even state that, like, I don't feel like you're respecting me sharing my boundaries right now. And then based on you doing that step of advocacy, can then let you know if this person is now a red flag because they are shutting you down completely, or if they're like, oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, not respect your boundaries. Let's, not do that, and let me hear you out. So I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt, and, basically enough rope to hang themselves, if you will, that it's just like, I've given you all the opportunities to state how I need to be met. And if you can't meet me there, then that's a different story. I also want to note that this is a place of privilege, that I can say no to certain things. Certain people, they can't always say no to a certain project because, especially as sex workers, we need that paycheck. We need to, or if it's a specific director or production company that you have been dying to work with, and this is a resume builder as well as, potential windfall, that's a more personal decision as to if you want to continue knowing that your boundaries may be crossed. In that case, I would then advocate for someone to be on set with you that can then advocate for you. And so then you have to then negotiate having an additional person. So Royal Fetish, we don't like having an additional person, but we will always listen to your boundaries and respect them. So I think that could be a way for you to maybe continue with that relationship and still protect yourself based on that situation. I'd love to know what Jasmine would say, though.
Totally agree with you. I don't offer as much rope as Tiana does. And that just comes from a great deal of experience and certainly privileges as well, which you got to take a look at the presentation on diversifying your income via the Sex Work Survivor Guide, where then you have an opportunity to say no to some things because you're set up in other ways. But to that question, we have had people say like, oh, don't worry about the pre-production call. We can work all that out. And it's actually a crossing of our boundary. That if you are not taking that time to discuss the things that are important to us to know about you and for you to know about us, this is not going to create that beautiful piece of content that we want. Even if it works out on the tail end, the anxiety of going into a space where you're not sure is not going to give you my best performance, nor is it going to give me the best performance as a director to pull from you, because I'm not really sure what I can and cannot. So I think that is important. I would suggest that for those of us who, don't have the time for pre-production, don't have the team to pull those type of things together, or as Tiana said, we're working from a place where there's a power dynamic that we do want to respect for what the outcome is for us, putting something in writing. All right, so if the person cannot make time to have a discussion with you, then you can discuss with them. And it may be a one-way street of communication. But I have done that with larger companies where I've been in a position where I'm like, oh, I really want to do this, but I don't want them to mark me down as mahogany or whatever they call Black people on their site. So I've emailed them, I understand that we're probably not going to have time to jump on a call before I reach set. But these are some things that are really important to me. If any of these are going to be a barrier to us working together, please let me know before I jump on a plane. And then I've done it. And then, like I mentioned before, if you can't have that preventative work on the front end, and you may find yourself on the tail end having to advocate or protect yourself, at least you have something that's in writing. Okay. I hope that helped, I love. Kat says, I want to meet who I'm going to be intimate with. Everyone should have a pre-production meeting. Just hop on a Zoom and look them in the eyeballs. Yeah, that is, it really is important. It helps you and I'll tell you one of the things that we will not shoot with a company that doesn't allow us to know who we're going to work with, even if it's a last minute change and they have to send it to us, an hour before because someone canceled. We don't do blind dates for work for a couple of reasons, just to get that familiarity, to have these discussions around boundaries, and also our personal and political and value sets have to align before sharing that intimate space. And even taking intimacy and personal aspect out of it, who we align with from a business and professional space really matters to us in our company. So we do things like go through people's Twitter and how do they represent themselves on social media, because eventually we're going to be promoted together. And that can have some damning outcomes on, does this person treat people in the LGBTQIA community well? Do they treat people in the BIPOC community well? Are we in alignment with a lot of different things, as much as at least that person shares publicly? And I want them to know that about me also. So, for some people, it's just about the comfortability of being intimate with someone that they've never seen before. And for us, it's a couple of steps beyond that. It is protecting our image. So again, remember, our boundaries are about creating protection in our workplace. And part of protecting for me is also protecting my brand in terms of who I choose to work with. Cool. So we have 2 minutes open to taking 2 minutes more worth of questions or comments. And in the meantime, I would just like to thank you, Tiana, for joining me today and being willing to do this by yourself. If I wasn't able to make it today, it was so much better having you alongside. I would like everyone to please check out Tiana's work, especially around harm reduction in the sex work industry, specifically the Sex Work Survivor Guide Summit. Please, if you are not cued into the services that Pineapple Support offers, especially the dynamic groups and workshops that are offered every week with a variety of different therapists bringing different modalities to you, please participate. Even if you don't think you need it, somebody that needs you to be in there to provide support to them, or to take that information that we learn in group and share it outward. Please check out all of my work at royalfetishxxx.com, knowing that it was created with the ethics of the performers and the directors and the cast and crew in mind. You can see some of the other work that we do around fetish training at jetsettingjasmine.com, and support the people who support us. Check us out on Playboy Centerfold, and I am at Jet Set Jasmine there. Thank you so very much. Bye, everyone.